the name down before we start recording.
Welcome everybody to Geekvice episode 215, proving any vice with enough geek can become a virtue. My name's Morph, that man's Kip. Good evening, Kip.
Good evening.
We are back for another week of Geekvice. So what have you been doing since the last time we recorded?
Well, when did we? I guess it's throwing me off now that we're recording on a Thursday night.
We're recording a few days early, like almost like a week earlier than this show's going to get released, because I'm going to be out of town next week, so we're covering for that.
Yeah.
And we couldn't record on Tuesday because my room was being used, so it's not anymore.
Yeah. Well, you had more going on than I did, that's for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, it's been a little crazy. Are you still playing board games on Fridays?
Do bears shit in the woods?
Yeah, pretty sure
okay,
that's
then.
Right. So,
yes,
how is
still do.
We should probably do a check-in here on how is your 5 games, 10 plays for 5 different games. How's that going?
Oh man, I am behind. I am at, let me check, dun dun dun. Out of 50 plays, I have 13 done.
Jeez.
So 37 plays left. 263 days left to do it. Sounds like, well, that's not too bad. But when you factor in, you have to divide that number by 7 because we only play once a week. That's what? 38 weeks with 37 plays. I'm cutting it down to the wire, and that's not saying, there won't be Fridays like the one after Thanksgiving and stuff like that where we won't be playing.
Right.
So I'm cutting it close.
You are pushing those limits.
That's right.
That's it. Well, hey, if you don't make it, at least you get as close as you can get, and then you set your goal for next year, and, maybe you don't have 5 really tough games to get in there.
Yeah, it's interesting because we have a fluid group, I guess is the best way to put it. Sometimes there's 2 of us, sometimes there's 7 of us. The number of people can really influence what game we play. Like when we've had 7, that's the perfect number to play Shadows over Camelot.
Right.
So when we've had 7, we've been able to play that. It's worked out really well. And then when we have smaller numbers, that's perfect for Scythe because the more people inside, the longer the game takes.
Right.
So that works out pretty well. But then when we're in the 4 and 5 person range, then we play Jason's games.
Yeah.
So it makes it tough. But you know what? If the worst thing that happens is I play games, then I feel like I can't lose.
Right. Well, and I mean, if you get like some of the games you picked out, you hadn't gotten very many plays on at all, and now all of a sudden you could, double or maybe even triple some of the total plays that you've had on some of these games you've been really wanting to play.
Yeah, and that was the whole idea. I think that's why we decided to do it. It's like, I've got these games that are actually a lot of fun. This will actually make it so they get to the table. Like Shadows over Camelot. That game kicks butt. It really does. It's a lot of fun. But it's not one of those games you think about for game day.
Right.
You load up some games and you take them with you. Usually that's not one you take. But now that it's on my list, I take it with me. So
you make sure that it's getting there.
That's right.
Yeah, we have not played a lot of board games, but we've just been really busy bouncing around between all the different things going on that we haven't really had a whole lot of time to really be able to sit and not do anything. So,
that makes it tough.
Yeah, it has. It's made it really hard. It's cut into my video gaming, it's cut into my board gaming, it's really cut into a lot of stuff I really have not done, which is also, again, why we're recording on a Thursday night as opposed to a Tuesday night when we Tuesday night, that's when we normally record, is Tuesdays.
Yeah, Tuesday nights. And it's also like bizarro because you're the one traveling for work instead
Yeah,
of me.
right, exactly. Yeah, so I'm gonna be on the East Coast going to Pennsylvania and for work, and so it's like, well, I'm gonna be gone from Monday through Thursday. I won't get back until Thursday afternoon. So it's like, well, we gotta fit it in sometime, so let's fit it in now. This is my last chance right before this weekend's gonna be busy with my oldest son's birthday is this weekend, so we're going to be busy with that. And of course, the weather here in Kansas decided to be an asshole and has been beautiful all week. 80 plus degrees today, and Saturday's supposed to be cold. Sunday's high of 40 degrees.
And it's supposed to snow.
Yeah, we were going to tailgate before the sporting game on Sunday because it's a 3 o'clock start time. So we're like, heat of the day, it's going to be nice. We get out there at noon, tailgate, have a good time, go into the game, enjoy the game. Reese is bringing a couple of friends of his to the game. Yeah, we decided we're not going to tailgate now because nobody wants to stand outside for 3 hours when it's only 40 degrees. So
It's tough, especially kids.
yeah, we're gonna do something else. I'm not really sure what. Maybe a Dave and Buster's trip before the sporting game, and then go over to sporting. So
That's a heck of an idea.
yeah, it's not all bad. It's one of the advantages of having a sports stadium so close to retail type shopping area. So, you would think our other sports teams would get that figured out. Like Chiefs and Royals. Put your damn stadiums on the middle of nowhere and not build anything around them. So, but yeah, that's what we got going on. But this week, we have an awesome episode, or what I think is an awesome episode. And of course, the stream decides it wants to be a butt.
It did decide that.
Let's pause that before we get into that. I'll pause the stream. Yeah.
I've put up with lagging.
Yeah, exactly. I'm trying to cater to everybody, damn it. So, so what we've got this week, I think this is a really good topic. What we've got is we've been talking about board games. We talked about Mysterium last week. So, and we talked about on the Mysterium how there is there's a video game version of the board game that Asmodee, whatever the name of that company, Asmodee. Yeah. I'm gonna call him Asmodee because it sounds awful, and that's probably the right way to say it.
It's a weird sexual position, Asmodee.
Right?
Asmodee.
They've created a lot of their board games. They've turned into video game forms of them, and by video game forms, I mean like straight up AI. You can play single player or you can do a multiplayer type thing. Some of them are even like you can get some games on your phone and be able to play like you make a turn and then you can wait for your opponent to make a turn when they have a chance. Like, so it's kind of cool like that where you can play just on your free time. So in that same sense, it got me thinking about what has happened the other way. Video game themed board games where they've tried to take a board game, or they've tried to take a video game and turn it into a board game. Does that make sense? Am I saying that right?
Well, either way.
Yeah.
It's either that or the other way around, but
right.
Yeah.
They do both. But some of the games that, going through and searching, some of these I had no clue they made board games of, but it makes me kind of want to find them. I knew XCOM, which I'm a huge fan of the video game, and I kind of want to play the board game, but I haven't had a chance to yet because I don't know anyone who owns it.
Actually, you do.
Do you have it?
I do not.
Oh. Does Jason have it?
He does.
Oh, well then I'm going to find a Friday where
At least I think he does. I probably shouldn't speak for him, just in case I'm wrong.
When Jason listens to this, because we all know that he listens, he can email me or send me a text and let me know if he does. And if he does, I might have to find a Friday where I can meet you guys there specifically so we can play that, because I want to try it. I've also heard, like, in doing my research on this, was that the XCOM game actually has a like a app component to it, where that keeps track of timing and what all is going on in the background.
Oh, it's not on his list. For some reason, I thought he had it.
Oh, bummers. Bummers.
Somebody I know has it.
Well, you're going to have to find out who that is so that I can either borrow it or I can play it with them. Or I'll just maybe
invite
have to
him
go.
over. We'll invite him over and then knock him over the head and take the game. Is that what your plan is?
I'm good with that. Yeah, I'm okay with that. But yeah, there's a companion app that you put on your phone or a tablet or something like that that keeps track of the overall progress in the game and what the aliens are doing, which kind of makes it kind of cool. Like, I think I don't know, I kind of want to see it. I want to see it played. Some of the other ones were, let's see here, get back to my list. Civilization, the board game. That sounds cool. I love Civilization.
The board game's pretty good.
Is it?
It is. It's pretty in depth. It takes a little bit of time, but it's a fun one.
Yeah. Assassin's Creed Arena. That sounds kind of cool. What else was there? Oh, the Witcher adventure game. So I love the fact that they've gone and made a board game off of a video game that was made off of a book series. Like, I think that's kind of cool. And you want to know the next kicker to that one? There's a video game that is based off the board game that is based off a video game that is based off the book series.
I think we just created some sort of loop that's, could end the universe as we know it.
Yeah. So the Witcher adventure game, which is a board game based off the Witcher series, where you get to play as like multiple character. You can be multiple characters, including Geralt, and travel across the kingdoms, completing quests, slaying monsters, doing all the Witcher type stuff. And yeah, they turned that board game into a video game as well. So if you just don't want to play Witcher, but you want to play the Witcher board game, you can play the Witcher board game on your computer. How about that?
Mind blown, I guess. That's all I got. When I hear that one, I think I have a World of Warcraft board game.
Yes.
There are two flavors. One is this bigger, more rectangular box, and it's really highly rated, and everybody seems to like that one. And then there's the one I own. I got it for like $10 at one of those clearance sales at Barnes and Noble.
And now you know why it was on clearance.
It's not horrible, but it's pretty repetitive, and after a while, you're like, I lost interest.
Right.
It's not like the game mechanics or anything like that is just horrible. It's just after a while, you're like, oh yeah, I've done this 50 times now. I think we can move on.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, that'd be kind of bad. How about the what's it called? Portal, the uncooperative cake acquisition game.
If it has, well, you know what? I'm going to look it up, because if it has really cool cake,
it does.
meeples.
It does.
Then
yes.
I'm just sold for that reason alone.
Yeah, like, that is a great idea, and I think it's awesome. Cake is your key to victory.
Oh yeah, I've seen this. Oh yeah,
Whoever has the most cake wins the game. Yeah, those are awesome. And that was, so when I saw this, I'm like, oh man, how is that going to work with trying to do these portals and things like that? And it says in the description that or in this one review, that the portals are just a small part of the larger puzzle. So it's trying to figure out these puzzles, and I think that is really cool, and I really kind of want to check that one out. Like that looks just like a lot of fun.
Yeah, it looks pretty cool. It's rated a 6.4 on Board Game Geek, and in my opinion, anything that's over a 6 is usually a pretty good game.
Oh, that's good.
So
That's
there you
good.
have it.
So,
Maybe you could go to Pawn and Pipe. Maybe they got a copy and you can play it there.
oh yeah, we should go do that sometime. The other one that I saw here that really kind of kind of blew my mind, Street Fighter the card game.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Have you played that?
I have not.
That
Um,
that just seems like a really good idea. Like,
to me, it just sounds like war. But hey, there's also another game called Jab or something like that. It's a card game about boxing.
yeah.
I have a feeling it's pretty close to that.
Oh yeah, it's probably.
I can't
Well,
I can't say for sure.
what it kind of strikes me as is it kind of makes me think of like it's gonna be something like, maybe Kings of Tokyo, except without the dice. Where you're just playing cards that are like special attack type things, and
Yeah,
some. It kind of sounds like a fun mechanic to just be able to like, yeah, I'm gonna hit you with this card and then just fling the card at them. That could be cool. Um,
yeah. When I think of these kind of games, I'm glad to see stuff like the Street Fighter card game and the Portal one being they they have a cool factor without being too many pieces, without being fiddly.
right, right,
Because when I think of this category of video game to board game, I think of stuff like Dark Souls, Doom, Gears of War, where they're just these monstrosity of games where there's a lot of moving parts and things to keep track of, and it's very fiddly. And um, Jason's stepson has a copy of Dark Souls. I don't even know if they've ever gotten it to the table because it is a monstrosity.
yeah.
The coolest thing about the game, though, is you open up the box, and right there on top is a piece of paper that says you died, just like the video game. So that's pretty
awesome.
cool. But if you can't get it to the table, it's,
Yeah, and that's the thing that makes some of these hard. It's like, but one of the things that I really noticed, and this, I guess, um, the thing that I noticed looking through here is this list includes a lot of board games that have a strategic side to it. And actually, I was really surprised on how many of these were, how many turn-based type games were there, or things that could be broken down really easily into turns. Dark Souls is one that kind of really strikes me as I can see that being really difficult, but when you play the game, it's very Dungeons and Dragons ish. You could
yeah,
see somebody rolling dice to make these different attacks. The same thing with Doom, with um,
Gears of War.
Gears of War, Witcher, Assassin's Creed. They all kind of fit that same thing. And then you get games like XCOM. You get games like Civilization that are very turn-based. Like, I feel like I'm playing a board game when I'm playing XCOM on my computer. Like, it feels like a computer game in the sense that there's animations, but I feel like I'm playing a board game. I'm moving this guy here, I'm moving this guy here, I'm performing this action, I'm performing this action, and now I wait for the opponent to take their turn. They already have that feel to it. One game that is on here that kind of goes in a completely different direction, or comes from a completely different direction, is StarCraft, the board game.
That's a monster.
That I could see as being very, very very, very unwieldy. Like, that game, the video game itself it's quick reflexes. It's being able to plan strategy, which I can see being turned into a board game, but that is a game where both people are moving at the same pace. Like, they're doing things simultaneously, and not knowing what the other person is doing is part of part of what makes that game so difficult. not being able to see what the other person's doing. And I'm curious how that can, you can get that same kind of suspense factor built into the game, into a board game where you're both sitting there in front of each other.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point because like video games that have the turn-based mechanic, perfect for perfect for board games. Sorry, but yeah, this simultaneous thing, I'm always curious to play a game that's that way. I've only played a couple,
Yeah.
and you fall into the trap of still waiting for the next guy to do his thing before you do yours, because that's just how you play board games. Even though you're supposed to do some things simultaneously, you kind of don't.
Right.
You still want to wait and see, and react. And
Yeah. Now, the one review that I did read about the StarCraft board game is that the one thing that it pulls directly from the video game into the board game, which I can see and makes perfect sense, is the resource management idea of it behind
yeah,
it. Like that makes perfect sense, dragging that in, and maybe that's where it goes. Once you hit this certain amount of resources, you just kind of like you get the guys to win, automatically. It's whoever gets to this point first, and it becomes more of a resource management like type thing, and less of the battles and more of the more of the resources. I don't know, but it's interesting. That's one that like struck me as like I don't like, that's not one that I would typically think of. It's not a video game I would typically think of being converted to a board game. So,
yeah,
but
and this genre's gone a long way. I remember, because I'm that old, when they came out with the Pac-Man board game. You ever seen this thing?
oh yes, yep.
Where the board looks like the screen. It has little spots where you put white marbles down. You got these plastic Pac-Men that pick up the marbles as you go by.
Like they actually like scoop up the marbles as you go. Yep.
So, they've grown. That has grown up as the video games have grown up. But sometimes I wonder if Pac-Man was just as fun as some of this stuff coming out now.
Yeah.
But it's things like that I don't know, kind of have this whole nostalgia feeling, which gets me to when I've played board games on the computer or whatever. I played the hell out of a game called Othello.
Yes.
On my Atari 2600. I spent so many hours playing that game.
And yeah, and that's like, well, and that kind of leads to that same point, like where that's the perfect transition to go from the video games to board games to board games to video games, and how that's really kind of, in my opinion, you see a lot more of them coming out now, and I think it's even spurred the board game industry on even more. It's gotten people more involved, and I think Othello is kind of one of those perfect examples, because that is a game that is not like, it's not overly complicated, but if you sit down with kids like, hey, play this game, they look at it like, huh? What? All I gotta do is flip these things over? Oh, that's easy. But they don't really get the strategy and the domination side of that Othello game. And playing it on the computer, like, oh, I remember playing that thing a ton. And that was where I actually got to be, well, another point, I got to be pretty good at Othello and could actually play the board game. The other one that I had was chess. I loved playing chess as a kid, but I didn't have anyone that would play chess. My dad taught me how to play, and then he finally got to the point where he's like, I'm not playing you anymore. You just kick the crap out of me too easily. So he wouldn't play anymore. And so one of my biggest childhood memories is playing battle chess against the computer. And
Love Battle Chess.
you know, Battle Chess was great, where the characters came to life when you moved them. Like, you wanted to move the rook, you know, and the rook would turn into a giant rock monster and just walk over. And if you captured a guy, they'd actually get into a little hand-to-hand combat. I loved watching, you know, the rook could come in and just smash the bishop,
Yeah,
and then he would just like he'd pick his hand up, and then the bishop would just float down. I'm like, yes, that is awesome.
yeah,
Yeah, just the little things like that. And so not only did games like Othello and chess and Battle Chess allow you to play a board game where you know either didn't have an opponent to play against, or you wanted to learn more. You could also learn more how to play, like learn a little bit more of the strategy behind it, and that goes into a couple of games that have been turned into video games that I played on my phone, that I had played as a kid as a board game, and then kind of forgot about them and kind of forgot how to play. But when I saw them on my phone, like an app that I could get on my phone, I'm like, oh, I have to get those. And that was Carcassonne and Catan. Like, being able to play those on my phone and just playing against a you know, a computer opponent whenever I wanted to, was like, oh, this is awesome. And it brought back that love of board games again. That's like, oh, now I need to make sure that I have these to be able to play with my kids, you know, because
yeah.
like those are good classic games that are so fun. But you know, that you just want, you're standing in line, you can play a game of Carcassonne while you're waiting at the DMV. Like, that's awesome.
So that's what everybody's doing at the DMV. Okay, now I get it.
Yeah. Well, and you know, and it's kind of fun that they've turned in, you know, they've, once I got to that, when I found Carcassonne and I found Catan, I started looking for other ones that I could find, and I found Ticket to Ride, and so I was playing, that first time I played Ticket to Ride, I played it at lunch, you know, one of the times you had brought it, that was the first time I had played it, and when you and I worked together, and then I ended up getting it on my phone, and so I could play it just, you know, whenever I wanted. And even now, I'll play, you know, I'll still play Ticket to Ride occasionally, just because I'm, you know, laying in bed watching TV, and I'll play a game of Ticket to Ride. Monopoly was another big one. I play the little handheld electronic Monopoly because nobody would play Monopoly with me, and it was great because you could play through part of the game, and then you could just set it over to the side and not play for a couple days, and then get back and finish the game because Monopoly takes so damn long to complete.
Yeah, yeah. Trying to remember what console it was. It might have been Sega Genesis that I had the Monopoly on.
Oh yeah.
And that was, you know, it was fully animated and had all this, you know, especially if you played the car.
Yep.
You know, the car just kind of bounced down the road and all this other stuff. It was pretty fun. I mean, I had the same problem when I was younger that you had. Is like, I want to play these things, but I don't have anybody to play with. When I was in high school, I had a little bit of a gaming group, and we'd get together and we'd play Risk. And it got to the point where I won every game, so they didn't want to play Risk with me anymore.
Yeah.
So when they came out with Risk on the PC, it's like, oh hell yes.
Yep.
I get to play some Risk because my friends would not play with me anymore.
Yeah, and that's where I think some of the board games, like some of the board games that I would love, you know, the longer board games, the games that take like really long periods of time to play, you know, like Risk, you know, that can be a, honestly, I've played a multi-day game of Risk in college. I want to say it took us an entire week to finish the game. And it was one where we put it on a big sheet of plywood, and we could pick the game up and like move it over out of the way so that like it wouldn't get bumped or knocked over or anything while we were going to classes, and then come back that evening and play more Risk and stay up into the wee hours. But you know, having it on the computer or being able to play it on an electronic device where you can play through part of it and then save the game, be able to go on with your life, and then be able to pick it back up when you have that free time. I think that's great, and that's, you know, that's one of the nice things about board games getting turned into a video game, in my opinion.
It is. When I first think about it, I think it's counterintuitive. You know, I want to play board games because I want to hang out with my friends and do that stuff. But sometimes you want to play a board game and there's nobody around.
Yeah.
You know, I have Scythe and Viticulture, and Stonemeyer Games is really good about creating a single player focus for the game. You know, the automata or whatever they call it. So there's special rules for if you're playing solo, which is nice, but when you're playing by yourself, for some reason, setting up and tearing down seems like a bigger chore.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's because I'm super lazy or what, but it's like, oh, I don't want to set this up just for me.
Yeah,
you know?
and wouldn't it be nice to be able to just like, oh, you know what? Let's play a game of Scythe, and I can get a computer opponent to work with you. Now, one of the downsides, and I've run into this a lot of those board games, when they go and try to program the AI to play these games, the AI is terrible.
Yeah.
I mean, well, that was one of the things. That's when I played Carcassonne. When I was playing that on my phone, I would purposely do things to like, okay, the challenge is, can I do this all with just this? I have to be able to win with only this thing. And so I wouldn't get any of the others, and I purposely make it harder on myself. And I'd, you know, sometimes I would still win, but I wouldn't like completely go with my goal. And you know, it was to make it harder and make it more of a challenge. Like some of the stuff you go in and you play and you're just like, oh, I don't even have to hardly think, I can win so easily because the AI is morons. But the other advantage that those play is like the board games on PCs or on electronic devices is the ability to get to play with friends that you don't live near. You know, playing simple things like Words with Friends. You know, that's Scrabble on your phone, where you can play.
It is.
You know, you're playing Scrabble with somebody that lives, you know, 5 states away. That you can't just go sit down with each other and play Scrabble when you want. You could play a game like that that's, you know, all on its own, and you know, or playing games that, yeah, it's like they just don't get to the table nearly enough, like Small World. I played that game once with you, and I absolutely loved it, and it never really came back to the table because we just never, like, there was so many other games, and it just never really fit into the time that we had, you know? But that was a lot of fun. I really like that game.
Well, there you have it. I'll have to loan it to you because it sits on my shelf and collects dust.
Yeah.
It's not one of those games that gets requested a lot. So,
right. Yeah.
But yeah, you know, I like the idea that there's certain games you can play on the PC, and you even forgive the AI for being a dumbass. But there are times when I like the fact that the AI is a dumbass, and you just totally annihilate them. It's like, yes,
yeah,
I am smarter than the machine.
Right? Yeah. Yeah, exactly. You know, it gives you that good feeling, but yeah.
It does. But if you lose to the machine, then you're like, oh, I need to reevaluate my life.
Right? So, I guess, so, I don't know, take this back 10,000 steps, look at it from above, and, you know, what do you think? Do you think that these video games of board games are helping the board game industry create new fans?
No, I actually don't. And the reason I say that is, like you liked the board game, had nobody to play with, so you got the electronic version. If a video gamer finds the electronic version, I don't think they're going to run out and buy the board game version because they liked the video game version.
Right. Right.
So I think it doesn't affect the bottom line really at all, unless
I think it's maybe just two separate. Now, what about the other way? Do you think some of these games, you know, like Portal, Witcher, XCOM, StarCraft, those kind of games that are video games being turned into board games, if they're a good adaptation of them and they're not too unwieldy, do you think it could create, you know, maybe you pull a video gamer into a board game setting?
it's possible. I could see that actually being the case. I think that's the reason the aforementioned Jason's stepson bought the board game, is because he liked the video game.
Yeah.
And his stepdad is big into board games and thought, hey, here's a way to bridge a gap. So, yeah, I think it could.
Now, when
the hard part is a lot of those times, like the Dark Souls games, those are not cheap games.
Yeah.
They're at least as expensive as the video game version.
Oh, hell,
in some
maybe
cases,
more.
they're more expensive than.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's kind of the scary side behind it, and I think that's you know, that, well, much like a few episodes ago when we talked about the price of board games, it kind of starts, you know, you can scare people off when they go to purchase a game and they look at it and go, oh, that's $120. I can go play that same game or pretty close to that same game in video game form and pay less than $60 for it.
Yeah. And here's the beauty of the video game side of it. If the game has been out for a while, it gets cheaper.
Yeah.
If the board game been out for a while, it's still the same price.
That is true. That is true.
Yeah, a game that came out 10 years ago is probably the same price today as it was 10 years ago.
Yeah, and you know that's rough. It's rough.
Yeah.
So,
Video game came out 10 years ago. You can probably get it for $2.
You can. Yep. It's not even 10 years ago. You can.
Yeah.
5-6 months after the game's been released, you can get it for $10. You know. Yeah. It's it is. They do drop really quick, and you're right. Board games don't. But I will say the one thing that I think can help the board game industry with putting their board games on PCs is just that extra source of income. You know, it can keep. You might be able to, you know, you might be able to supplement some of the fact that your board game can sell a little bit more on the video game side, and you know, maybe then you don't have to sell as many board games to keep your company up and running, type thing. So
yeah, and that's probably pretty accurate. The whole idea, I imagine, for any board game designer is just getting people to play their game. Whether it's in cardboard or digital form, if somebody's playing their game and having a good time, that's pretty much, I think, the goal.
Yeah.
Besides making them pay for it, obviously. But, yeah, so it's not a bad thing. It's, you know, like I said, I don't know if it influences people to buy more board games or not, but it is another income stream, and you get to play a cool game. Whether your friends want to play that game or not, you can still play. The downside, of course, to the video game version is eventually there's going to be a PlayStation 5, and that game isn't going to work anymore.
Yeah, that is true.
And you're going to have to buy another copy. But I could buy, you know, Dark Souls, the board game, and 20 years from now pull the game out, and it still works. The cardboard still works. So
is very
I don't have to buy another console. So, so you know, there's always give and takes to these things, and I guess what I'm just trying to say is just play games, whether it's a video game or a board game. just play more games. You'll be happier.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree. And one of these days, we will have to. I'll have to find some of these the board game ports, I guess we could call them, or video game themed board games, and try some of them out, and we'll get them on this show. We'll get some reviews on this show because after seeing this list, I really want to try some of these. Like, I want to find somebody who has Street Fighter, the card game. I kind of want to play it. Like, it's probably going to be terrible, but, you know, hey, I want to play it. I want to be able to say, I played Street Fighter in card form, and I started throwing cards at people to punch them.
Well, I didn't know they had a electronic version of Mysterium, but I when you showed that to me, it's like, well, if I got that and played it, does that still count towards my board game challenge?
I think it should.
I think it should too, and that'd be a good way for me to cheat the system. But then again, you're cheating the system, and that's not the whole idea behind it. But still, I could play Mysterium.
Yeah, you could get some more plays in it, but the other thing is, it could give you the more, like, you can even use it as I'm going to try to use this to test some new theories, like some new things, or try these new strategic sides or these new ideas. You know, I want to try doing it this way and see what happens. And
yeah,
I think it's cool. I think that's a great way, and I really want to see Mysterium and how it's played electronically. That's it's one that it's on Steam, and I need to go add it to my wish list. I think if it's not already, so I get notified when it goes on sale. And because it's one that can be played multiplayer. A lot of these board games on PCs can be played multiplayer online, so you can play with people across different areas. So it'd be really kind of fun if you get Mysterium and you could get, like, you, me, Jason, you know, a few of our friends to be able to play that are just so far in different areas and play Mysterium. I want to see how that mechanic works with the ghost and not being able to talk. And
yeah, and it's only a $5 price tag.
Oh, is it only $5?
It's only $5.
That's a steal of a deal. And that was something else. I looked on my phone to see what some of these things were, like Catan, and what was the other one that I came across? There was one of these others that I came across in here that I was like, oh yeah, Pandemic. You can get Pandemic on your phone, and it's $3.99.
There you go.
And that's another.
Yeah, I think damn near any board game you enjoy, I think there's probably an electronic version of it somewhere.
Yeah.
Especially when they're only $5, $4 or $5. Heck yeah.
Yeah, pick it up, try it out. I think Mysterium being electronic would make the game even harder, because you wouldn't be able to work together. You know, if you're all sitting in different areas, you're really not helping each other out with making those decisions on what this card should look like, or what about this. I mean, unless there's a chat function to it, maybe that could work. I don't know. It could be really hard, but I kind of want to check it out.
Well, with a 2-minute timer and a chat, trying to play it like on my phone, would be rough. I'd run out of time constantly. Still typing my first sentence. Oh, I'm out of time. Okay.
Oh, dang it. I got one word in. It said, duh.
I don't know. Time's up. Damn it.
Exactly. All right. So let us know what you guys think about board games and video games and the meshing of these two worlds. Is this really a good idea? Do you think it's a good idea? Do you think it's a bad idea? Should we stay away from it? Is it like video games getting turned into movies? You just shouldn't do it. Let us know. You can email us at geekvice@gmail.com. Let us know what you think.
Absolutely.
Anything else you want to throw out there, Mr. Kip, before we wrap this thing up?
Other than International Tabletop Gaming Day is 2 weeks away, so hopefully everybody we'll go out and play at least one board game that day.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
yeah, I don't know if I'm going to be able to get out and do anything. We had talked originally about possibly doing something, but this month is just
your month went to hell.
Yeah, like it's bad. It's bad time. But that's the 28th, right?
Yep. So the 28th it's going to be an awesome day for me because I'm seeing Infinity Wars for the second time that morning, and then I'll go do some board gaming that afternoon. So it's not going to suck.
That's not all bad. Yeah, I might have to get some board gaming done that morning too, because looks like I don't have anything in the morning that I have to be at, so might be able to do that.
Yeah, I'm hoping to get to tabletop on Metcalf, and they're having a little soiree, if you will. So I'm going to check it out.
That'd be a good one. That'd be a good one. So, all right, everybody, that's what we're going to do here. That's where we're going to call it a night. Be sure to go check out our blog at geekvice.blogspot.com. You can follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/geekvice. You can follow us on YouTube. Subscribe to the YouTube channel at tiny.cc/geekvice. That's where you get notifications on when this video goes live, when we have the live recordings. You can come make fun of us, and also where you can find Geekvice Gaming, our gaming channel where I play video games and suck at them usually. Although the XCOM series, I think I'm actually winning, so. But that's one of those games where you feel like you're winning, and then all of a sudden you die. So, I still think I'm winning. You can also follow us on Twitter. That man over there, at Kip Killigan. You can follow me, at Geekvice. And, of course, as always, you can reach us by email at geekvice@gmail.com. Thanks, everyone, for listening to our ramblings, and we will see you next week.
Later.
This podcast is part of the Podcast Arcade Network.